Coming in at number 10, Ginny was doping Harry. What? Okay, Ginny and Harry, that's a problem for the ages. Let's just get very real for a second. Does Harry actually fancy Ginny? Like, truly actually? Ginny meets Harry in book 1, but it's in book 2, The Chamber of Secrets, where we find out that Ginny is desperately in love with Harry, and why not? He's a famous older wizard, and he's pretty moody, and to be honest, the whole broody act is like a moth to a flame when it comes to teenage girls. Harry never shows any interest in Ginny until the 6th book, The Half-Blood Prince, which is a book that heavily focuses on potions, like heavily. So we know that Voldemort was born of a witch who doped a muggle with Amontentia, a love potion mentioned by Slughorn in Harry's year 6 potion class. Funny that it's actually that year that he seems bothered when Ginny does get a boyfriend. He didn't give two hoots about Ravenclaw student Michael Kroner when they were hooking up. But when Ginny dramatically starts going out with Dean Thomas right under Harry's nose, suddenly he's forgotten all about his previous enduring love for Cho Chang, and he's all like, Ginny, love me. J.K. Rowling herself said that Hermione and Harry should have got together, so does Ginny encourage Hermione to get with her brother in order to keep her out of the way? Honestly, with this theory, I would like to think that Ginny wouldn't turn to doping, having been a victim of Tom Riddle's diary herself. But Harry's attitude dramatically changes in book 6, and to be honest, I can't spot a reason why. It can't just be her glow up, can it? Okay, this is actually a scary theory turned to even scarier fact. Coming in at number 9, we have wizard's poo. For a long time, people have been speculating about wizarding waste. Do wizards poo like us mere muggles? Well, the fact that Moaning Myrtle used to live in a U-bend suggests that maybe she doesn't see that much action. It did lead to some people suspecting that wizards don't go to the loo like we do. Sure, Hermione loves a good cry in the toilets, but does she ever pee in them? The no poop theory was actually tackled by J.K. Rowling herself, who revealed that, yeah, wizards do go. But she also revealed something pretty absolutely awful that has me, I don't know, breaking out into cold sweats and worrying in a really existential, sloppy waste way. In a post on Pottermore, J.K. Rowling revealed that before the Muggle invention of plumbing, wizards used to relieve themselves where they were, and then they just vanished the evidence, like, and the poop is gone. This has opened up a whole new theory can of worms, which is, where does all the vanished wizarding waste go? So far as we're aware, wizards can't cease to make things exist, so there must be a really dark place, darker than the dark side of Quirrell's turban, that's filled with ancient wizard poo. I'm not here for it. Coming into number 8, Mrs. Norris is Mrs. Filch. Is Mrs. Norris Filch's wife? Possibly. This is a theory dragged up from Tumblr, the cesspool of internet theories, and it was posted by Yo-Yo Spaghetti-O. They said that Mr. Filch used to have a Mrs. Filch, but she was an illegal animagus who then went through a bad transformation. She ended up as a cat, and they say that this is why Filch loves Mrs. Norris so much, and also why he's so cranky, because he's just frustrated. Or we hope so. Coming into number 7, Harry made the Dursleys awful himself. I think that we can all agree that the Dursleys were the absolute worst. Of course they were. But was it Harry's fault? This theory says, actually, yeah. So the big reveal many of us saw coming in book 7, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, was that Harry himself was a Horcrux, a tiny fragment of Voldemort's soul that lived within him, allowing the Dark Wizard to be invincible. Having a Horcrux around tends to send wizards mad, a la Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. Ron was around a Horcrux, the Slytherin locket, and it sent him pretty insufferably mad too. Ginny also didn't fare too well from being around Riddle's diary. So we have to say, imagine how the Dursleys felt being around Harry for a constant 11 years and then every summer. They were cranky because part of Harry was evil and it was making them awful. It really wasn't their fault. Coming in at number 6, we have Dumbledore's death prediction. Trelawney. Mental, right? Well, actually, maybe not. She did indeed make the prophecy, and she said things throughout the Harry Potter series that have ended up being totally legit. For those paying attention, she actually predicted Dumbledore's death long before he died. It all went down in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and nobody noticed. Professor Trelawney came to the Great Hall during the Christmas feast, but wouldn't sit down. She said this: "If I join the table, we shall be 13. Nothing could be more unlucky. Never forget when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die." Alright, Trelawney, calm down. But actually, the thing is, she was right. There were already 13 people at the table and nobody realised. Blooming Peter Pettigrew as Scabbers was hiding in Ron's pocket. Who was the first to rise on that occasion? Dumbledore. And then she does it again. In chapter 5 of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, 13 people dined together at Grimmauld Place, and Sirius Black was the first to rise. Who was the first to die in that gaggle? You guessed it. Coming in at number 5, we have Voldemort's Boggart. We know a lot about Boggarts from Harry's third year Defense Against the Dark Arts class. We know that Neville's Boggart is Professor Snape, Hermione's is Failure, Harry's is Dementors, Ron's is Spiders, so on and so forth. Boggarts are what a person fears most. So then, what scares the most fearsome wizard of them all, Lord Voldemort? He's the bringer of nightmares and deaths after all. There has been a lot of speculation as to what Lord Voldemort's Boggart might be. The internet seems to have settled on death, seeing as Tom Riddle was so afraid of death he split his soul to make himself immortal. What kind of death scene Lord Voldemort would see? Well, that would surely be absolutely horrifying. Coming into number 4, Snape blames Neville. So speaking of Neville's Boggart being Snape, have you ever wondered why Snape was so mean to him? Like, Snape is mean to everyone, but he's particularly mean to Harry and, curiously, Neville. While we know that Snape hates Harry, he's a product of James and Lily and he loved Lily and hated James, sure. Also, we do know that he died protecting Harry because of his love of Lily, so, you know, it's really complicated and that is reflected in his relationship with Harry. But what's his beef with Neville Longbottom? Apparently, according to a dark theory, he hates Neville because his parents are alive in St. Mungo's. Irreparably damaged, sure, but alive. Snape thinks that had Bellatrix been the one to go and get Harry after the prophecy, she would have left the Potters alive, which means his beloved Lily would live on. In a roundabout way, Snape blames Neville. Ugh, okay, I'm calling this a theory because part of me really absolutely doesn't want to canonize anything spewed out by the cursed child. I really loved the visuals of the play, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Stephen Hoggart and John Tiffany, they are kings. But then, the cursed child. The story, I mean, come on. With that in mind, at number 3, we have Bellatrix and Voldemort getting kinky. Ooh, that is a scary visual that honestly I feel like I'm never gonna get rid of. We know that Voldemort is incapable of loving, having been born of a love potion and grown up without care, but it seems he found time to fulfill a few dark desires with crazy old Bellatrix. According to the appearance of Delphi in The Cursed Child, the Dark Lord and one of the nastiest witches of all time, murderer of the Weasleys, Bellatrix Lestrange, well, they got it on. And also, it was happening under our very noses in the books. Grim. Bellatrix and Voldemort are killed in the Battle of Hogwarts, and it wasn't just baby Teddy that was left orphaned. It seems that baby Delphi was too. Now, are any hearts gonna bleed for the baby of the Dark Lord? Or is she doomed to a life of evil biddings before she even gets started? Nature versus nurture. Big questions. Coming into number 2, a Landon Dowlat Singh favourite, we have Voldemort is Harry's brother. And so is Snape, or so it seems. There is a more complicated theory out there that suggests that Harry, Snape and Voldemort are 3 brothers. In The Tale of the Beard and the Bard, this is basically who they're reflecting. This one was posted on Reddit by Popsicle Incorporated 4 years ago and got over 750 upvotes. So it all goes down in The Tale of the Beadle and the Bard. Dumbledore is said to embody death and also a combination of all of the brothers. Tom Riddle / Voldemort is the brother drunk on power and vengeance that ultimately leads to his demise. Snape is the brother obsessed with the resurrection because his love of Lily, which ultimately leads to his demise. And Harry is the wise brother who had a knack for hiding from death. The only time he comes close is when he willingly chooses it, which is like when the brother greets death like an old friend. The theory was actually well liked by J.K. Rowling herself, who said that she was touched that Dumbledore was seen as death. A weird thing to say. Side note though, Landon genuinely did think Harry and Voldemort were brothers. I know what I'm gonna buy him for Christmas. The entire back catalogue of Harry Potter. Okay, finally coming into number 1, this scared me and actually I think it's legit. Draco Malfoy is a werewolf. We know Draco Malfoy went weird in The Half-Blood Prince, he just did. No longer was he your young, classic, energetic school bully. He had become insular, dark, and kind of murderous. We assume the reason is because he's actually being groomed by Voldy, but actually, there's a much darker theory. There's an internet theory that says that Draco had been bitten by Fenrir Greyback when Lucius wasn't able to get Lord Voldy the prophecy. Apparently, lending evidence to this scary theory, at one point Voldemort says to Draco, maybe you can babysit the cubs, when he's talking about Remus and Tonks' future kids. Also, quizzically, J.K. Rowling mentions that there was supposed to be a scene in the third movie where Draco Malfoy was going to impersonate a werewolf. This was supposed to be maybe some area of foreshadowing. So does Draco Malfoy get away scot-free after the Battle of Hogwarts, or is his punishment having to live a double life with his oh so pure blood being polluted? Coming in at number 10, Umbridge and the Centaurs. Look, Professor Dolores Umbridge was undeniably evil. She absolutely was. She made Harry write in his own blood, she doped students, she approved of spying, and she was evil. But when bad things happen to bad people, it may feel just, but it doesn't undo the hurt that they caused. With that in mind, did Dolores Umbridge deserve her punishment? I suppose that depends on whether or not you believe the fan theory about the Centaurs mass raping her. Honestly, from the book, certainly seems like they may have. In Greek mythology, centaurs regularly defile human women, and we know that Umbridge is carried off by them, only to later be found in the hospital wing of Hogwarts. Let me read you a particularly interesting section. Professor Umbridge was lying in a bed opposite them, gazing up at the ceiling. Since she had returned to the castle, she had not, as far as any of them knew, uttered a single word. Nobody really knew what was wrong with her either. The usually neat mousy hair was very untidy, and there were still bits of twigs and leaves in it, but otherwise she seemed to be quite unscathed. Madame Pomfrey said that she is just in shock. Then during Dumbledore's funeral she is there, but J.K. Rowling makes a point of highlighting that she is very, very skittish around the centaurs. So was she? And isn't that even a bit brutal, even though she was evil? Nobody deserves to be mass raped by horses, ever, ever, ever. Coming in at number 9, we have Bertha Jorkins' baby. Evil old turncoat Wormtail kidnapped Bertha Jorkins. There's a nasty, disturbing, and pretty gross theory that Bertha Jorkins was pregnant when she was captured, and then was forced to carry her child to term, after which she was murdered and her baby was used as Voldemort's temporary body, which is why tiny baby Voldemort emerges from the cauldron in the Goblet of Fire. Things have got a bit wild for a second, so let's just scale it back a bit for these next 2 points and talk about the sad fact that actually you probably are a wizard, but you missed out on Hogwarts. Coming into number 8, we have the whereabouts of your Hogwarts letter. So there is a theory going around that you might legit be a witch or wizard, but because dastardly old Voldemort wiped out the ministry records for Muggleborns between 1985 and 1998, many of us were simply never flagged and invited to the best adventure of our lives. Sucks to be us. Honestly though, it doesn't mean that you aren't still powerful. Coming into number 7, a weird theory, but maybe it works, J.K. Rowling is Rita Skeeter. Rita Skeeter is one of the worst, not deserves to be raped by centaurs worse, but not great. She's a gossip, a hack, and literally a fly or a beetle on the wall. This theory was posted on the Harry Potter Fan Theories Tumblr, and it reads, in this theory, people have come up with the idea that Rita Skeeter, an unregistered animagus journalist, is fired from her job. She's angry at the Wizarding World, and without work, Rita chronicles the entire Harry Potter series, hoping to expose magic to muggles and thus making the wizards sorry that they ever messed with her. Unfortunately, all muggles reading her books believe them to be a work of fiction. Nonetheless, Rita becomes as rich and famous as J.K. Rowling, and her idea for revenge melts away. She comes to enjoy her life in the muggle world, far more so than she ever did in the wizarding one. Honestly, if you'd said this to me a few years ago, I would have been totally baffled, but with J.K. Rowling's recent trend for providing us with a little too much unnecessary information and sticking her wand in to stir the cauldron, so to speak, at every opportunity, honestly, maybe. I still love her though, but not Rita Skeeter. Never Rita Skeeter. Although, good glasses and good outfits. Coming into number 6, Fawkes is Newt Scamander. So it seems that Newt Scamander is seen on the Marauders map while Harry is at Hogwarts. In terms of canon, he is alive, and sure, the sensible conclusion might be that he's just visiting Hogwarts, but others are convinced that Fawkes is Newt. could it be? Now, we don't know what Newt's Patronus is yet, but J.K. Rowling says that we will find out during the next Fantastic Beasts movie. If it's a phoenix, then perhaps this may be a nod to it being true. Now, some people think that Newt turns into Fawkes in the same way that Nagini was destined to turn into a snake. Bit of a stretch, sure, but one Redditor commented, Harry's loyalty to Dumbledore, not his courage in arguing back to Voldemort, is why Fawkes came to him. Newt is a Hufflepuff, the house that prizes loyalty the most instead of courage. Ooh, maybe. Others think that actually Fawkes was a gift from Newt, which I can definitely get on board with. But beyond that, some people think that Fawkes is Dumbledore's Horcrux, which actually would be wild because that would require Dumbledore to create an act of unspeakable evil, which I don't believe that he could do. Okay, so you're a wizard. J.K. Rowling is Rita Skeeter and Fawkes is Newt Scamander. Glad we cleared that all up. What is happening with Harry at number 5? Oh, he's in a mental asylum. That old chestnut. There is always a bit of a and they woke up and it was all just a dream kind of theory about everything ever, and this isn't too far off. So basically the theory goes that Harry's childhood was so traumatic, being brought up in a cupboard and whatnot, that he was so depressed and damaged, invented a life outside from under the stairs. A world where he was magical, he was famous magical, and he could escape the abuse of the Dursleys. Others say that he was so damaged that he was actually in an institution where a blend of drugs kept him docile while he dreamed of Hogwarts. Other versions of this theory say that James and Lily didn't even exist themselves, and that Petunia and Vernon are actually Harry's parents. Now, I don't know about that, but our next point, I don't know, it's kind of an extension of the asylum theory. Coming into number 4, we have the so-called real demise of James and Lily. So building on from the Harry isn't a wizard, he's just crazy theory, there is a super dark theory going around that yes, Harry is in an institution and is not really a wizard, but the real origin of his trauma is because James Potter went postal. It seems that some fans think that James and Lily Potter's death was a murder-suicide gone wrong. James successfully killed Lily, and Harry has some misplaced flashbacks of this happening, but imagines a villain instead of his father. After thinking he killed his wife and child, he then took his own life, not realizing that his son miraculously survived. Other versions of this theory have James's motive being Lily cheating on him with Snape. Coming into number 3, we have Ariana, Dumbledore, and the Muggle Boys. Never trust a Muggle boy, it's my rule. This is kind of reflective of the Umbridge story. J.K. Rowling doesn't necessarily say it, but she heavily implies that Albus Dumbledore's sister was raped by Muggles. In the books, Dumbledore's sister is quite the character development point for the arch wizard. Her brother absolutely loved her, as did her other brother Alberforth, but she is very, very unstable. It seems that at the age of 6, she was quote-unquote attacked by Muggle boys. Attacked, okay? Now the book reads, it destroyed her what they did. She was never right again. She wouldn't use magic, but she couldn't get rid of it. It turned inward and drove her mad. It exploded out of her when she couldn't control it, and at times she was strange and dangerous, but mostly she was sweet and scared and harmless. A lot of people think that at the age of just 6, she was attacked by Muggles. Coming into number 2, we have the Portkey and the Scalp. God, this is horrible. It sounds like the title that the robot wrote when he wrote the Harry Potter and the one with the eyes. Did you read it? The Harry Potter chapter written by robots? It was pretty great, and this seems like it could have come from that. Okay, so just to cut straight into this, do you remember Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire? It was very, very Polyjuice heavy. Barty Crouch is pretending to be his dad and constantly swigging the stuff while his dad's locked in a trunk, and then Harry's name is thrown into the Goblet of Fire. Apparently this was part of a wilder scheme that went very, very wrong, and the evidence seems to hinge on a two-way portkey. So Voldemort wanted Harry in the flesh because he wanted to kill Harry in the flesh, and then he wanted to scalp him, apparently. It seems that Redditor Miraniel picked up on the fact that the portkey was good for a journey out of the maze to the graveyard and then back again, which isn't totally normal for portkeys, they're usually just a one-way thing. They think that Voldemort was planning on killing Harry, scalping him, feeding the rest of his body to Nagini, then he was going to use Polyjuice Potion to make a whole batch with his hair. He had the ultimate amount of hair because, again, the scalping. He was gonna become Harry and cause mischief from inside Hogwarts, but the old Harry wouldn't have been able to come to the phone right now because he's dead. Theory. This is actually pretty wild, I have to admit, and I just told Jack from Top 5 Scary Videos about this, and he said, why would they scalp him? He's been through enough, and honestly I agree. Don't kill his parents and then scalp the poor boy. That really is just laughing in his face. or his skull. Finally, coming into number 1, we have how Horcruxes are made. Now the topic on everyone's lips is how on earth is a Horcrux made? J.K. Rowling really has left this one to the imagination, which is making it even scarier. She simply says that it takes the darkest of all magic and an unspeakable act to make a Horcrux. Wizards murder, impersonate and torture, so what could be more unspeakable? A lot of people have a lot of horrifying theories. As Harry ended up as an accidental Horcrux, we assume it involved some kind of ritual sacrifice, but others say that to split a soul, you must first remove a body part of your very own and bury it somewhere. Others point to necrophilia or cannibalism or both at the same time. Honestly, the mind boggles in a truly awful way.
Starting us off at number 10, we have an early Deathly Hallows cameo, but like really early. Back in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire movie that was released back in 2005, for a very small and brief moment, with some eagle eyes, you can see an object in Dumbledore's office on a shelf. This object is a see-through pyramid with a sphere in the center and what could be described as a wand pierced through the center of it. This is extremely close to the Deathly Hallows symbol that the entire Harry Potter series almost stems from. Well, aside from the night that Voldemort attempted to kill Harry along with his parents. But anyway, you're probably thinking that this was just an early cameo, so what's the big deal? The big deal here is that the final Harry Potter book wasn't even written yet. Half-Blood Prince, the 6th book, it came out in 2005, but Deathly Hallows wouldn't be released for another 2 years in 2007. Yeah, I'm sure Rowling had an idea of what she was writing about at the time and was probably on set helping out with some small things, but yo, this is a very early Easter egg, and I love it.
Coming in at number 9, we have Fred and George Weasley. Literally, those two are the best little trickster twin brothers ever. You really fall in love with their characters over the course of the movies and even in the books. While in Deathly Hallows Part 2, spoiler alert, Fred Weasley dies! I know! Why did she have to do that? Literally just ripped my heart out. Anyways, in one of the final scenes, when it's revealed that Harry is indeed still alive, George excitedly turns to his side, presumably to tell his twin brother Fred, the news, and Fred is always by his side. Then he realizes, oh wait, he's not there. He's dead, and then his facial expression just drops. Dude, this little detail ripped my heart out. Like, way to add salt to my wounds. It's like, yay, Harry's alive, but Fred isn't, and you're instantly depressed again. Try watching this scene again and notice this moment. It surely will make the scene feel a lot heavier than it already is.
At number 8, we have Draco Malfoy actually being a werewolf. I mean, I always knew there was something off about that little dweeb, but he just keeps getting worse and worse. This theory with the little Easter eggs have quite a bit of evidence to back it up. One part of the theory is that in the 6th and 7th books, Draco stops his prankster ways and becomes solely focused on assisting in the assassination of Dumbledore. The main point of this theory is that Fenrir Greyback bites Draco when his dad Lucius is not able to fetch the prophecy. Greyback is famously known as the one who bites Remus Lupin, thus famously turning him into a werewolf. Later on, there's a moment when Voldemort says to Draco that maybe you can babysit the cubs, referencing that Remus and Tonks are having a child, as well as one theory of foreshadowing in a moment in the 3rd movie, Prisoner of Azkaban, when Draco is supposed to impersonate a werewolf as well. So is this theory true? Some say yes and some say no, but I will leave it up to you by watching the movies and reading the books over and over again, because if it's true, that changes a lot.
Coming in at number 7, we have Harry's scar. So we all know Harry's scar only burns or hurts when Voldemort is near. While in the Sorcerer's Stone, there's a scene where Harry's scar burns, yet Voldemort wasn't there. During the scene, Quirrell had his back to Harry, and as we know, in that dramatic reveal with that terrifying CGI, Voldemort was on the back of his head. So Voldemort was facing Harry, and that's when his scar started to hurt. Honestly, I need to pay attention more during the movies. Like, I totally didn't pick up on that one, and it's such an obvious Easter egg.
At number 6, we have Harry plus Ginny plus love potion equals love? Whoa, okay, what? Love potion? It's pretty clear in the books, but especially the movies, that Ginny has had a crush on Harry since the very frickin' beginning. From so many moments of her acting shy around him, with her going all wide-eyed whenever she surprisingly sees him. I mean, I think we all know that look. I mean, they're oh man, there's my crush and I wasn't ready to see you right now, but oh god, I think I love you, will you marry me? Ah! No, just Ginny and I? Okay, cool, whatever. This theory erupts from the fact that Harry never really paid much attention to Ginny throughout most of the series, aside from being a close friend and almost a protective brother figure to Ginny. Then along comes Half-Blood Prince, where Harry is almost unhealthily obsessed with Ginny. How could this be? Well, that same installment in the Potter series is filled with many different characters using love potions, such as Merope Gaunt on Tom Sr., Romilda on Ron, and even Fred and George selling the love potions in their famous shop. This theory goes hand in hand with the theory that Voldemort is actually incapable of loving because his parents were a product of fake love out of a love potion. Does that mean that Harry and Ginny's kids will be incapable of love too? I don't know, you tell us, Rowling.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the intros. When I tell you, the creative directors and whole team behind the Harry Potter series, they literally thought about everything. Like, hello, the Easter eggs we have mentioned so far are absolutely genius. Anyways, this one is not as sneaky as the other ones, but it's still good. I don't know if you noticed, but the Warner Brothers intro to Harry Potter changes every movie. In fact, the logo gets darker and darker, just like the movies. It starts off bright because it's the first year at Hogwarts and nothing that crazy happens. I mean, compared to what they went through in the final movies, the first movie is nothing. Anyways, as more and more dark stuff happens to the gang, the intros reflect that. I will say though that the opening in Deathly Hallows Part 2 is slightly brighter than Deathly Hallows Part 1, and that probably symbolizes the fact that hope is near. Things are about to get better. The detail, people, I'm telling you, the detail. This is why I love the series.
At number 4, we have the Three Bros theory. There's a theory out there that predicts that Harry, Voldemort, and Snape are actually the three modern brothers of the Deathly Hallows tale, and honestly, when watching the movies and reading the books, the little Easter eggs and references kinda make sense. It is known that Harry is a descendant of Ignotus Peverell. It is also known that Voldemort is a descendant of Cadmus Peverell. So there's two descendants of the original Deathly Hallows tale. Could Snape be the missing third? Well, we can all say that Voldemort died for power, Snape died for his lost love of Lily Potter, and Harry bravely greeted death like an old friend, just like the three original brothers. The three characters led three very different paths just like the brothers in the story, and each of the characters came into contact with at least one of the Deathly Hallow objects throughout the series. So could these three be the brothers reimagined or even reincarnated? You tell me.
Coming in at number 3, we have Tom Riddle's room. Alright, so let's talk about the Half-Blood Prince for a second. In the flashback scene, we see Dumbledore visit young Tom Riddle in his bedroom at the orphanage. I completely missed this, but on the windowsill in his bedroom, there are 7 rocks resting there, all different shapes and sizes. This was a foreshadow that Tom Riddle would split his soul into 7 Horcruxes. Unbelievable. Let's give a round of applause for this Easter egg. It then makes me wonder if those rocks are placed in order of each Horcrux and if their size and shape have anything to do with it. I mean, the 7th Horcrux that was created was Nagini, who to Voldemort was perfect. So maybe that's why that stone is perfect. I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but it seems good to me.
Coming in at number 2, we have Dumbledore, who is actually Death himself. This is a theory that first came on the scene thanks to a Tumblr user, but there are plenty of eggs and references within the movies and books that lead us to believe that Dumbledore is indeed Death himself. First one being, Dumbledore is the one to give the invisibility cloak to Harry. Dumbledore is also the one to give the Resurrection Stone to Harry by giving it to him in the Golden Snitch. Then, Dumbledore indirectly gives the Elder Wand to Harry after he defeats Malfoy in a duel. The last piece, if you can buy it, is that Dumbledore can be considered behind or affiliated with the death of Snape and Voldemort. So with all those little tidbits, it makes you look at Dumbledore twice. Especially if the other 3 are the modern version of the 3 brothers from the Deathly Hallows, then Dumbledore could definitely be Death. And
in our number 1 spot today, we have the secret message. Snape was truly an unlikable character until the final book/movies when it was revealed he actually loved Lily Potter and was protecting Harry with his life. Seriously, I went from despising Snape to being like, oh, he's a great guy. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman. Anyways, during one of Snape's first encounters with Harry, he leaves him with a secret message, which went way over our heads because we were too busy being like, who is this terrifying, tall, dark, and handsome yet terrifying character? So in the scene, he asks Harry if he knows what would result in adding the powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood. Harry obviously doesn't know the answer, which whatever, that's fine. This was a huge secret message, and unless you know all about Victorian era flowers, you wouldn't have picked up on this. So Asphodel is a relative of the lily, while Wormwood is said to reflect loss and absence. Put that together and Snape was referring to Lily Potter, Harry's mom. Like, come on! My heart. It's a great and clever Easter egg.